taking notes from nobody.
Your superstars have off games.
Follow us on social media at Celtics Talk Weekly.
Well. Here we are. The Boston Celtics sweeping the Brooklyn Nets 4-0. I don't know too much to say, but I mean, a little bit closer than we might have wanted it to come down to at the end, but the Celtics were able to hang in there. Jason Tatum fouling out with right around 3 minutes left. Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown weathering the storm. I'm Justin Lowe alongside my two co-hosts, Rob Haytain, Seamus Arlingo. Below us, Ian Angelo should be joining us a little later on in the show. Rob, we'll start with you. We'll get our thoughts about the series overall a little later, but let's stick to tonight's game right now. What were your thoughts on this finish?
It was a great way to close out the game. Tatum got caught his sixth, whether you thought it was a foul or not. Probably not. You don't, usually call that type of foul on an all-star like Jason Tatum or a superstar like Jason Tatum with 2 minutes to go. But, Celtics still found a way to get the job done. Brown got a big bucket. Horford did his thing down low. Smart, obviously, really big for the Celtics down the stretch here tonight. And when Brooklyn came knocking, Kevin Durant, shot was falling. Seth Curry, gave us some buckets tonight, but the Celtics stayed strong, stayed true to their who they are, and they came out with a huge win to move on to the next round tonight.
Yeah, and excuse me, guys, I just got to do some cleaning here. Yeah. Goodbye, Brooklyn. Goodbye. Hello, and goodbye, Brooklyn. This has to be one of the best series wins the Celtics have had since the bubble. You probably think back to the Raptors series. I think that was the last series the Celtics won in the playoffs, is that Raptors series. That one felt good in 7. We swept the Sixers that year. And, of course, going all the way back to 2018, when we beat the Sixers, that was a good time too. But add this onto the memory list. I don't care that this didn't go 5, 6, 7. To sweep the Brooklyn Nets after all the narrative talking we've heard from ESPN and all these other media outlets for the past 2 years with them, even 3 years really, and to come in here and sweep them the way the Celtics did in this series, and particularly tonight where the Nets kept scrapping, kept fighting, kept coming back, and nearly came back near the end of the game with some help from Scott Foster and his officiating crew. But the way the Celtics closed out each and every one of these games and sent the Brooklyn Nets home, Kyrie Irving home, Simmons home, Kevin Durant home, Steve Nash home in 4 games. Amazing. It's amazing. How do we get to this point? This is one of the best moments of the past half decade for the Celtics. And the memories will only keep going further because next round we have Milwaukee. We all know their problems. After that, is it Philly or Miami? I know we don't want to look too outward, but this team is clearly the team that can go far. If you look at all the rest of the Celtics teams from the past decade, this might be the best. Right now, this is such a good moment, and I hope we cherish it because, I mean, sweeping the Nets in the first round, ridiculous. And
it wasn't like that. That's what makes this like so much sweeter. Like it's not like we took the first round against Chicago or we took the first round against a Cleveland or an Atlanta or even Toronto. We took the Brooklyn Nets. Boston knew what they wanted to do. They went out. They went 2-1 on that final 3-game road trip. You lost the game to Milwaukee without Jason Tatum. I think we only lost by 5 or 6 that game. And then you come out here and you sweep the Brooklyn Nets. And I want to just say, as if the previous 3 games didn't say anything about this team, guys, I want to bring up the final 2.5 minutes because the Celtics went nearly 3 minutes, the most important minutes of this game without their superstar on the floor, Jason Tatum fouling out. Very questionable call, but he fouled out. Marcus Smart had to step up. Everybody had to step up. Derek White had to come in and step up. How important was that final 3 minutes, Rob, that the Celtics were able to close out without their superstar on the floor? That says a lot about this team.
Yeah, it was everything. I think it all started on the defensive end, though. Brooklyn came knocking. They won that fourth quarter 34-26. And, everything was kind of clicking for KD there. Obviously, he missed a clutch
Right.
free throw down the stretch and that clutch 3 to put Brooklyn down 1 with right around 22 seconds left in that game. But, I got to show a lot of love to guys like Marcus Smart and Al Horford, though, and
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown. I got to give Jaylen Brown his flowers.
Right.
But, Marcus Smart showed a lot of growth this year. He was a guy at the deadline that a lot of us thought, it was time to move on. He couldn't really find a role. He was always that defensive anchor, but never really that, didn't think he could be that starting point guard for a championship caliber team. But, he showed us wrong. 20 points, 5 rebounds, 11 assists. He shot the ball kind of poorly from the floor, 43%, not the worst, not the best, very mediocre. Shot a good 37 clip from beyond the arc. But, he just made winning plays. Everyone just really made winning plays down the stretch when Tatum went out and Brooklyn just kept responding. They showed some fight tonight that we didn't really see out of the last 3 games. I thought Durant was going. He finished with 39, 7 and 9. We saw his best game, Seth Curry's best game, 23. And the bench for Brooklyn was producing well. 13 points from Claxton, 10 from Dragic. So, Brooklyn really gave us the best version of the Brooklyn Nets that we've seen over probably, I'd say, the past 2 months. And for Boston to go in on the road with Tatum on the bench, with some fouls not going their way down the stretch, it was a very impressive win for the Celtics to snag that 4th and last game in this series to move on to the next one and most likely play Milwaukee next round. And we got our work cut out for us, that's for sure.
Yeah, and down the stretch, this just goes along with the grand argument of how resilient the Celtics have been, not only in the second half of the season, but this year's playoffs, when it really matters. The first 3 games, the Celtics were ultra resilient in all of them. And tonight, this was probably their biggest moment somehow. Of course, in a closeout game. In a closeout game, their star player, it's fouled out. He's fouled out with 3-4 minutes left in the game. And he had to sit a little bit there in the fourth quarter because he already had 5 fouls. And after that, the Celtics, they took punches, and they threw them right back. Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, all 3 of those guys were major contributors down the stretch, along with Derek White, along with Grant Williams, getting to those loose balls. This team has been on a level of resilience that we haven't seen in years. We haven't seen since the 2018 squad this level of resiliency from a basketball team. And what they've been able to do this playoff series, and tonight in particular, just screams from the rooftop that they're going to be able to make a major run, and they're already making a major run, putting themselves in the semifinals. We got to sit back and think, we're in the semifinals right now.
Yeah.
We're in the semifinals. We're in the final 8, and we're the first team there. A couple months ago, we weren't even sure if we were going to make the play-in.
Yeah, the quarterfinals. The quarterfinals.
Right. We weren't even sure we were going to make the first round.
Right.
And so where this team has gone and the level in which they have bonded together during the second half of the season, enough cannot be said of how well this team is playing and how resilient they've been in overcoming that adversity, particularly late in ball games, late in the fourth quarter. And tonight was the biggest example, with Tatum being absolutely hosed by Scott Foster in the NBA, who wanted this series to go to a Game 5, a Game 6, and a Game 7 so they could keep collecting that revenue from this Boston-Brooklyn market matchup. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen because the Boston Celtics are just that much better than the Brooklyn Nets.
And the rest.
Goodbye, Brooklyn.
I didn't think Scott Foster was the worst. I've seen Scott Foster in worse games. I said this to Rob in the fourth quarter. I said, you know what? Scott Foster hasn't been doing such a bad job tonight. And as soon as I said
2 minutes later, I got another text.
And then he got a text of me cussing him out. But no, the way the Celtics executed, and this wasn't the first game. This series was, even though it was a clean sweep 4-0, this series had a handful of runs for each team in every game as we welcome in Ian Angelo. This had as he waves his broomstick in front of the camera, we love it. But Boston was able to overcome so many punches from the Brooklyn Nets, including, as Rob mentioned, a huge three-pointer by Kevin Durant with about 30 seconds left that had cut this down to 1. Ian, what are your thoughts on this game?
I'm not going to lie to you. This game gave me a heart attack. When Jason Tatum fouled out, I was not I didn't have a lot of confidence. I won't lie to you. But they pulled it out. KD choked at the end with the missed free throw, and he choked again, and Celtics sweep Brooklyn.
Can you imagine, guys? Seamus mentioned, like, we were sitting here questioning if we were even going to get into the first round, the quarterfinals. We're sitting here now. Oh boy, did we ever get through the quarterfinals? we didn't even need a game 5. We swept. We walked through the quarterfinals, and I don't want to make it sound like every game was easy, but this Celtics team at times dominated this Brooklyn team, and you have some high hopes going in. Maybe I'm not trying to sound cocky at all. I know Milwaukee is a better coach team, a better defensive team. They obviously have championship experience straight off from last year. They're still, in my opinion, the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. But guess what? Some good news here. We get the healthy Time Lord back. He's looked great in the 28 minutes he's played in this series. And we get home court advantage again. We have 7 games. We have 4 out of the 7 games in Boston with the TD Garden crowd. I'm feeling pretty confident, Rob.
Yeah, well, something you did mention here that I want to talk about is Robert Williams.
I
thought he looked all right tonight. He definitely looked better in game 1. Game 3.
Right.
Something I did notice, however, was his timing's way off.
Back
with dunks or putbacks where he usually is, his timing is perfectly. Block shots where was just perfect timing. It's been all messed up. He hasn't been on the court for a month. So, hopefully this week in practice, he kind of gets his rhythm back. And I think having a healthy Robert Williams is, huge against Milwaukee, especially not only giving a healthy Robert Williams, that sends Tice to the bench. And Tice has been giving us some really good minutes here. So, that kind of allows that adds an extra man of depth to the Celtics bench, which is huge. I thought, also Derek White was good tonight. Grant Williams, the bench played well. So I definitely think entering this Milwaukee series, the presence in the paint that Giannis holds, having Robert Williams to be able to kind of man down the paint and hopefully get his timing and his rhythm a little bit back before that series starts. We probably have anywhere from 5 days to a week off here before our next game, as we kind of await for the other games to wrap up. That's going to be huge for us. And Milwaukee could be without Chris Middleton. So, Boston, we're looking really good right now, but I mean, wow, this series could be 2-2 right now. So great job closing great job closing these games out.
Yeah, and moving forward, this was such a big win. We talked about it on the last post-game show for the Celtics in terms of not having to play a game against the Brooklyn Nets team. I mean, having that week off of rest can make an entire difference in a team's playoff journey, because now we should all be Bulls fans. Obviously, the Bulls would be a better matchup in the second round, but ultimately, we should be Bulls fans hoping that they extend the series with Milwaukee, because guys, when they run out of gas in a series, they don't look at the one series and go, okay, well, this is what defeated us this series. It was typically we had a tough series before that drained us. We came in here, and then it turned into a mudslide at the end of the day. And now the Celtics, they swept. They took care of their business in round 1. They'll have probably, like Rob said, a week off, 5 days a week off. And they'll face Milwaukee, who hopefully Chicago will take that to a game 6. Maybe they take it to a game 7 later on down the line. Doesn't look too likely, but if they can, that's a huge, huge advantage for the Celtics in the second round, considering all of this rest that they're going to have. There's an argument that, hey, their rhythm could be thrown off just a little bit, but that rest in the playoffs cannot be understated at the end of the day. That is so important, and it's so crucial that the Celtics pulled out this game tonight in Brooklyn for their overall.
Definitely. This was huge for the Celtics, and we've said it in the past that we've needed the rest. We needed to get Rob Williams healthy, and now, like you said earlier, Rob looked a little off today, but I mean, now he's got, like a week or so until the next game to rest up. And I mean, he already was, scheduled 4 to 8 weeks anyway. So having more time for him to rest before the next series is going to be huge.
I feel like it was kind of like a little test run with Rob. In terms of we know he's progressing, he's good to go, but let's not throw him into a 35 to 45 minute, minutes like JT and the rest of the starters. I mean, I honestly don't know what I have too much to say. I think Kyrie Irving gave up. I didn't think he had a good night at all. I hit some shots, but nothing crazy. Like, it was, I think he finished with 20, in my opinion. It was probably the most quiet 20 points he's had in his career. I didn't think it was all that in a bag of chips. KD had a really good game, like a really good all-around game, 39, 9 and 7, or 7 and 9, something like that. He looked like he wanted to try to play and keep this series going, but I get his frustration. I don't want to spend all this time talking about Kyrie Irving, but Rob and I mentioned it. There's 3 championship caliber teams that Kyrie has been on that he's really messed them up. And I'm glad it didn't. There was times before where I was glad, where I was like, oh, I wish it worked out with Kyrie Irving. I mean, obviously he's one of the better point guards in the league that we've seen, one of the most prolific scorers in the game. But then now you look at these times and you're like, holy shit, we really benefited after Kyrie Irving left. We might have not realized it then, but right now Celtics are certainly rolling without him. Where does Brooklyn go, Rob?
Well, so a couple of things real quick. The direction of Brooklyn's got to go is, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but I think the direction Brooklyn's got to go is just an off season of kind of reloading. I think that you looked at this season, and it's not every year where Kyrie Irving's not going to be able to play every home game. So in Kyrie's defense, even though in the grand scheme of things there was a solution to the problem at hand that was a pretty reasonable and easy one. Next season you assume that he's going to be able to play every home game. And obviously there's the Kyrie Irving contract situation they got to deal with. So what I think Brooklyn's going to do is, a report came out, they're not going to fire Steve Nash as of right now. Obviously, Ian, as you just hit yourself in the head with the broom, but
all right.
But obviously, they got Ben Simmons. They got a lot of work to do. The talent's there. Joe Harris, right, is another rotational piece that that was injured and they got to bring in. So I think this direction for the Brooklyn Nets is really just kind of reload, regroup. I don't see their problems carrying into next season. I think this was a this season problem. And on the topic of this season, I had a conversation with my brother before the playoffs started, and it was something he said to me that was actually, a fantastic point, is that if the Brooklyn Nets were able to put a playoff run together this season, the NBA would have been broken. Because if you look, it happened last year with the LA Lakers, right? Another 7 seed coming in against a very, very good 2 seed in the Suns last year. All season, both teams struggled, were unhealthy, lineups were adjusting, and they managed to squeak into the playoffs. It's not reasonable to think in reality right now, looking back on this series, yes, they had Kevin Durant, yes, they had Kyrie Irving, right? It was a little unfair to say this series should have gone 7. You got to look at the whole picture. You got to look at teams. You got to look at coaching. Kevin Durant's been playing 40-plus minutes for almost a month and a half now, trying to will this Nets team into the playoffs to get that 7 seed, right? So, this has been a long time coming for Kevin Durant just to secure that 7th spot. When a 7 seed plays a team of this caliber, like the Boston Celtics or the Phoenix Suns last year for the Lakers, right? You can't just walk into the playoffs and say, oh, this is just going to work out. And I think the Nets fell victim to that. Personally, I think Kyrie Irving is to blame and to point the finger at his inability to stay in the lineup and his inability to kind of commit to his team long term and get the vaccine, whatever your opinion on that is, right? But that's just the fact that Kyrie Irving being out of the lineup really set this team back as much as it did. They couldn't gel. Kyrie said it himself. So, where this team goes in this offseason, I personally think they reload. They bring their guys back. They pay their money on who they got to pay. And I don't see Brooklyn running into these troubles next year as long as everyone stays healthy.
Well, for me, Brooklyn,
I
I think we could definitely continue. Rob said that, maybe these troubles won't happen next. I have no idea what's going to happen with the Nets because they have some of the most dramatic players in Situation A, and I'm glad that the Lakers didn't make the playoffs. I'm glad that the Nets got swept in the first round. I'm glad the Nets last year to Milwaukee, and I'm glad the Lakers lost to the Suns last year because these two teams simply thought, hey, let's put Justin. We're doing a show out here. But these two teams put together star players.
Oh, is my mic on?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I thought that was me for a second. I'm like, oh man.
I was over here behind the scenes trying to mute someone because I couldn't figure out who it was.
I'm sorry.
Because I knew I had my volume down.
I was posting memes.
But the Nets and Lakers, okay, they nearly ruined the NBA in a sense that they simply said in their front offices, our players rather, said, let's just team up. We're going to sign our max deals. 3 of us, whether it's Russell Westbrook and James Harden joining us. We're here. LeBron, James, Anthony Davis, and, of course, Kyrie and Kevin Durant. We're going to be here and, just throw minimum guys, throw mid-level exception guys, dudes who are veterans like Blake Griffin. You think back to DeAndre Jordan, Andre Drummond. Now, of course, they traded for him. Goran Dragic joins them in free agency. All these guys, LaMarcus Aldridge as well. We're just going to add all these veteran free agents here, and we're going to build a championship team because we're great as the superstars. Well, guess what? The NBA talents pool is much larger than it was 5-10 years ago. We have guys in the league now. You look at a team like the Houston Rockets. You look at a team like the Orlando Magic, a team like the Pistons. They're not a bad team. You look at their rosters and you go, I have guys on those teams. They have guys that could actually slot into a lineup in a playoff rotation and play valuable minutes. The league's talent is so much more vast than it used to be. And for these, Kevin Durant, Kyrie, LeBron, Davis, even PG and Kawhi, who are out of the playoffs right now, for these guys, let's come together, and it's just going to come together because we're the star players here and we're really good. That you have to build cohesion. You have to build an actual basketball team nowadays. You look at teams like the Bucks, the Suns, the Celtics right now, the Miami Heat. These are all cohesive units with chemistry, and they all have guys 1 through 8, one time, who play a role and do their job. But you look at a team like the Lakers, it's like, who do we throw out crunch time? Malik Monk? Taylor Horton-Tucker? Who are we going to Trevor Ariza for Trevor Ariza to come back and Kendrick Nunn? You look at the Nets, Goran Dragic is playing out there in crucial 4-quarter minutes come playoff time, and he's, of course, been a tremendous player throughout his career, but he's certainly on the downside. And you just look at the matchup problems that these teams have. And the reason for that is these stars came together, essentially took up all the cap space, and went, look, if you just put stars at the top of the roster and fill out the rest with minimum guys, we're good. And for a second there, it looked like it was actually going to work. It really did. And I even won arguing that, hey, the Celtics, we're holding back from trading for other star players for so long. Why don't we go all in on somebody? Exact same method. Good thing that you didn't listen to me, front office, because this Celtics team is now well-rated compared to all these other teams with major stars who cannot get the job done because they step. And next season, I have no idea what's going on with them. Ben Simmons, he's coming back. Presumably, will he ever be back in the NBA? I mean, what he did in this playoff series was absolutely ridiculous, or rather what he didn't do. Kyrie Irving, that is on the table. He probably doesn't want to deal with all the hoopla anymore, especially after getting swept. We know he wants to hoop, but he didn't have him until tonight. And, of course, coming into tonight, but maybe this is a little passing of the torch series with Jason Tatum where Kevin Durant, he can't just carry a team much longer. He's 32, 33 years old now. Guys are getting really old now for NBA players, and there's going to be questions surrounding the Nets next year. And that's what gives in the Celtics, not only this year, but into next season, considering all the players on the Celtics roster, they're all in their prime. They're all under contract, and they're all playing a role that makes sense for them right now. And so it makes sense for anyone to want to leave the situation, whether it's in free agency or via trade. And moving forward, they're all paid. So right now, the Celtics, especially after this series where we just sweep the Nets, send them home in 4, everyone has to be feeling just tremendous right now in Celtics Nation. Tremendous.
Including Celtics Nation, Paul Pierce just tweeted out, "Can I get half of that Nets?" Oh, that's great.
But something that personally, I think that we got to talk about here is that Seamus, earlier you mentioned, right? Because now we got to look at the next series. As great as this little Kyrie Irving Boston Celtics little matchup was, we took care of business. It's behind us now. It's in the past. We got to look forward, and we got to look at the business ahead, because the Celtics have an opportunity to do something, much more than come out of the first round and beat Kyrie Irving. You got to look at the Bucks situation right now. Chris Middleton is out indefinitely as of right now. Seamus, you mentioned you hope that Bucks Bulls series kind of is extended a couple more games. But I'm going to ask you, maybe for the Celtics' sake, wouldn't it be a little bit nicer if Milwaukee took care of business maybe in 6 or 5, so that we can play the Bucks for maybe 3 or 4 games? If the Bucks don't have Chris Middleton, I don't see the Bucks getting it done against us at all. I don't think that offensively they'll have enough to respond to the Celtics defense.
I don't know. See, my thing with the Bucks is that Grayson Allen has stepped up super big for them. Now, I feel like the Celtics can neutralize Grayson Allen. I don't think he's as good as Chris Middleton is, and honestly, he doesn't even have the track record of really torching the Celtics like Chris Middleton does. So I've thought about that, and it's going to be interesting because I've said pretty much the entire time the only team that I think is not the greatest matchup for the Celtics is the Bucks, because there's a lot of uncertainty. There's, every single player on that team can pretty much shoot and play defense. So, this is the Celtics' toughest test, and, it's going to be interesting how they guard Giannis, because Giannis isn't KD. Giannis can drive to the lane. Giannis can...
I think that makes it easier, though, for us.
I think it might be a little easier, but at the same time, Giannis, we're not going to get foul calls every single time either. And he might, so it'll just be interesting to see what happens.
I think defensively, the struggles we might see next series is going to be on the offensive side of the ball, because Milwaukee plays some damn good defense. But I think in terms of defensively, right, this was the hardest series we'll go through. Having to stop both Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant four times to get a win is not easy, right? Even though we swept them, none of these games were blowout wins. All were decidable within 7. Obviously, we got out to some 15-point leads, and Brooklyn came knocking. Honestly, I think in two of the 4 wins, we were up by 15 at one point. So, or maybe 3, I think, honestly, in 3 of them. But, I think stopping Giannis, in my opinion, is a little bit easier than stopping KD, because Kevin Durant can do it on all levels of the court. He can do it from beyond the arc. He can do it from the mid-range. And if you're playing too tight up on him, he'll beat you off the dribble and he'll take you into the paint. He's 7 feet. He can dribble like a guard. He passes phenomenally in his jump shots, probably top tier in the NBA. So if the Bucks don't have Chris Middleton, we've seen what Boston's game plan is here. We're gonna have your players 4 through 6 on your rotation try to beat us. We're gonna shut down your 1. We're gonna shut down your 2. Right now, if Milwaukee's 2 in the first 4 or 5 games against the Celtics is Drew Holiday. Holiday's a great defender, right? He's a beautiful third option for a championship team, but I don't know if that's sustainable against the Celtics defense. If the Bucks are without Chris Middleton, they could potentially be in some deep trouble, especially having to play 4 out of the 7 games in Boston.
Yeah,
I don't
certainly
see a world where we don't win the title if we beat Milwaukee. Like, if we beat Milwaukee, I don't see a world where
Golden State is a
I
tough,
think we could beat Golden
team
State.
I think we can, but listen,
I'm a lot more nervous playing a healthy Bucks than I would be Golden State.
Well, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the Bucks are the team to beat in the NBA. Until they're beaten, they are the defending NBA champions. So this is, by definition, if you want to go based off what I just said, this is the hardest series we'll play in all playoffs, or it should be. However, I got a long way to go. Long way. The road's just starting now. Brooklyn was dysfunctional. Obviously, we know what they could do offensively. The defense was just bad at times. They were undersized, didn't really have a true big, no rim protection. Their perimeter defense, they got a lot of small guards. So I think we got the job done in 4. We did our business, for no question. And I don't want to sound like a downer right now, but you got to look at the grand scheme of things. We can, no question. Do I think we can? But this Bucks series is huge, and if we get past Milwaukee, obviously we got to take care of business again against Miami or Philly or maybe Toronto. I don't know. Toronto looking like they're pushing a Game 6 back at home, but those Warriors and Suns out west, they're going to be tough. But if the Bucks are without Middleton, I don't see them getting it done for a whole series against the Celtics.
Yeah, and
Definitely
going into the series with the Bucks, it's going to be much tougher to guard the Bucks than it was to guard the Nets. Because with the Nets, you're essentially playing deny with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and you're letting the other guys beat you. With the Bucks, you're going to have a driving threat with Giannis and Drew Middleton. Kyrie and Kevin Durant are jump shooters. They take a lot of jump shots off the dribble. You don't necessarily have to worry about those guys driving 24/7 the way Drew Holiday and Giannis do. And, of course, against Brooklyn, they try to touch the paint. They try to kick out the shooters. They try to move on offense. Milwaukee's going to do the same thing, only to get more buckets at the rim. You think about Brook Lopez as well in that series, Bobby Portis. They all have guys who can drive the paint, get it deep, and kick out to shooters. And that's what's going to be so dangerous in the series compared to the Nets series, where driver – it felt like he had a lack of aggressiveness threes. Kevin Durant had a lack of aggressiveness as well. Until tonight's game, you saw more aggression come out with in a closeout gamed off elimination game, which I thought a tremendous performance from Kevin Durant. It shows a lot about him personally. The Nets just simply didn't have enough. But guarding Milwaukee is going to be so much tougher in that regard. They're going to have more open shots. They're going to have more opportunities at the rim. They're going to be tougher physically going towards the rim. So the Celtics, this is where the whole rest thing comes into play. I think ideally Milwaukee go to 6 games. In games, I think it would get to that point where we would think, yes, like, okay, if this series is extended, they have more time for Chris Middleton to come back. But the rest is so important for the Celtics. They're going to be in for an absolute dogfight against Milwaukee. Against the Nets, I agree with Rob. After game 2 or game 3, I was thinking, I don't know if it was entirely, we all thought coming into this series against the Nets, okay, they have 2 star players. They should be able to get a couple of games of star players, right? And I never thought the Celtics would lose the series, but I certainly thought that it would go farther than, right? And it simply did not. Milwaukee, they're lacking some talent from last year, but they ultimately have not the reigning MVP, but 2 as well, and that's just going to be a hell of a series no matter how you slice it, because they're not getting swept. Giannis is not getting swept. It's not happening. Not happening.
Imagine.
We said that with Brooklyn. You never know.
Yeah, but it's different.
No,
the Bucks actually play defense. So
the Bucks are actually really good 1-15. They are a really good team. I'll take Grayson Allen over Bruce Brown. I'll take guys like, who else do they got? Do they have Serge Ibaka?
Yep.
Yeah, they have Serge Ibaka. Like, they're a deep.
Oh, don't Serge Ibaka me. If Serge Ibaka's on the court, well, I'll go. Give me Serge. No, stop that. No.
That's a deep.
We'll say Serge Ibaka played really well against the Celtics.
For a third string,
he was on the
for a third string center, that's a really good third string center we have.
I don't want to discredit anyone on Milwaukee by any means. Right, great basketball team.
So you think Brooklyn series is going to be tougher than?
No. I don't think it's going to be tougher. But Milwaukee hasn't showed me anything against us this year for me to be going into this series and thinking, oh shit, it's Milwaukee. Especially without Chris Middleton. We have played Milwaukee extremely well. Obviously 2 losses. One of them on Christmas. We were up by 25, and we knew December Celtics, they were blowing leads left and right. But we handled business there. And then fast forward to just a couple weeks ago, Celtics, no Jason Tatum, no Robert Williams, no Al Horford, only loses to that team by 6. So, obviously I'm not coming out here and saying we're going to sweep them. Obviously I'm not saying it's 5. It's probably a 6 or 7 game series unless unless the Celtics come out again, or maybe Milwaukee comes out and surprises us, and either team, right? Something happens that I didn't think has happened. But Milwaukee hasn't showed me anything against us. I think we match up against Milwaukee so nicely. And it goes back to the Celtics switch defense they play. 1 through 5 in the starting lineup, especially now that Tice was kind of our weak link. He was still a strong weak link, but especially against a guy like defender like KD, Tice was kind of the guy to attack on defense. Now when you got Robert slotting back into the starting lineup for next 1 through 5, you can't really, that switch defense is killer. I'm looking at Milwaukee switch if they want to try to switch us or their defensive game plan. I'm attacking guys like Brook Lopez. I'm attacking guys like Grayson Allen. I'm attacking guys. Bobby Portis is a great defender, but if I can switch Jason Tatum onto him or Jaylen Brown 4 or 5 times a game, each of them, they're gonna win that matchup most of the time. So I like our matchup against Milwaukee, and I think Milwaukee is probably the hardest team in the East to beat other than ourselves. I think Miami's up there too. However, I think that there's a serious mismatch problem for the Milwaukee Bucks entering this series if Chris Middleton is out, because Middleton, he's athletic, he's a bucket getter. That man can get you 30 any given night. He's an all-star, right? Grayson Allen's a great role player, but Chris Middleton is an all-star, and you cannot discredit when an all-star is not on the court for your defending champions, especially when they're playing a team like the Boston Celtics, and how as big of a role if you don't have your second best player in the playoffs, you're automatically, put at a disadvantage right off the bat.
Right. And Boston's defense is a lot different than Chicago's defense as well. So you see a lot of open looks being taken by Milwaukee in this series. I'm sure there's going to be open looks as well in the Boston series if Milwaukee does advance, but Boston's defense has to show up. The Raptors just beat the Philadelphia 76ers, so they're going to a game 6, I believe. Yeah, game 6. That'll be interesting. Could you imagine? Philly
game 6 Harden. Game 6 Harden.
Could you believe this? Could you believe that if that happened?
Philly
lost. I just want to say something.
That's
the hard part's now done for Toronto, right? They're not coming back from down 3-0 anymore. They're going back home for a game 6. So listen, I'm not saying
that would be insane. Imagine Toronto. Imagine Doc Rivers being the first coach to ever blow a 3-0 lead.
After a handful of 3-1 leads already blown.
Bro, would Philly have to...
They got the hard part done. They went into Philly in a game 5 and beat them. So that was the tough part of the series.
That's wild. I'm watching this Dallas-Utah game. Dallas is winning right now, but oh man, that's insane. Honestly,
score? I had to turn it off because I had to improve my internet on here.
Yeah, it's 37-28 in the second quarter.
I'm hyped.
Dallas is up right now.
I'm a big screw Utah guy. I'm not a fan.
I'm a big screw Dallas guy.
Dude. Really? All right. Well, he just doesn't like Luka.
I don't like Luka. You guys know that. We've had our discussions. We've had our discussions.
Honestly, though, I am very excited for the second round. I feel like, we said that this would be a potential Eastern Conference Finals. No, versus the Bucks is going to be a real Eastern Conference Finals match. But
the thing is, like, every matchup we're gonna have in the Eastern Conference is an Eastern Conference Finals matchup, like Brooklyn and Milwaukee. Then if we beat Milwaukee, we're gonna have to face Brooklyn, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. I still think they could if they had the if they played against the right team.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't think whoever we see in the Eastern Conference Finals. Listen, Miami's just been so inconsistent this year throughout the course of 82 games. You don't think they're an Eastern
Conference Finals team?
If you put Miami on our side of the bracket, Miami's out first or second round.
Oh, that's different. But with their end of the bracket,
with their side of the bracket,
they're playing. They're playing Atlanta, then they're playing Toronto or Philly. That's much easier than playing Boston, Milwaukee, or Brooklyn. But for their side of the bracket, they're a Eastern Conference Finals team, hands down.
Philly is in trouble, especially if this Joel Embiid thumb is going to start bothering him like it has the past 2 games. Obviously, I think they're going to get out of the series. I'd be extremely shocked if they somehow blow this.
I want them to so badly.
I know, but I think it's going to be Miami. But I also do think
winner of the Celtics 6 in Toronto. I don't know.
Philly, not with this momentum. I think.
Imagine we face Toronto in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Would you imagine that, Justin? Now, wouldn't that be crazy?
That would be some poetic justice right there.
That was my prediction.
That would be insane.
That's his prediction. Toronto. He still stands by. You weren't standing by that 2 nights ago. You were standing by that 2 nights ago when I texted you. They were down 3-0. You said scratch that shit.
You win some, you lose some.
And they lost 3 straight.
Yeah, but we're about to win 3 straight.
They better.
4 straight now.
I would die. I think I would physically die if the Philadelphia 76ers blow a 3-0 lead and they lose.
Do they have to blow it up?
So I have a question.
Yes, they do. They'd have to.
I mean, Doc Rivers is going to be the Lakers head coach if they blow the series.
So I have a question though. If Toronto wins Game 6, do you guys think I don't think Philly will manage. I think they'll be so rattled that they're even playing in a Game 7 that I don't think. Mind you, Toronto was out without Van Vliet tonight.
They shit the bed,
and they were on the road.
Remember what happened last year with this? Not the same exact team, but I mean the Philadelphia 76ers, Doc Rivers have a track record of blowing these types of series, and of course it's not. No one's ever blown a 3-0 before, and now it's 0-144 all time after the Celtics took care of the Nets tonight. But they're in a Game 6 already. I mean, they just lost Game 5 at home. They did that last year. They lost 3 home games last year against the Atlanta Hawks. And 2 of them were closeout games.
Well, I just want to acknowledge the fact that Philly and Brooklyn traded trash for trash. I mean, James Harden is a shell of his former self. He scored 15 points tonight, 4 for 11 shooting. This is James. Are you kidding me? He had 7 assists, which is 7 assists is solid. He's moving the ball around well. I mean, are you kidding? He had 50. What is James Harden averaging in the playoffs? Can I get that stat from someone real quick? I can look that up. Hold on.
Let's see. James Harden in the NBA playoffs in 20. Wait, do you want tonight's game as well?
I want
his
playoff,
that might be hard to find.
His playoff averages entering tonight.
Well,
coming
in tonight,
9 points a game on 5 rebounds and 9 assists.
18 points at a James Harden a night. I mean,
and they gave up. They gave up 2 of their better rotation players. Ben Simmons wasn't playing for them, and 2 first-round picks for James Harden. And I think the bigger question right now, of course, they want to go to the finals. But I mean, are they going to pay him what he's going to demand during the summer?
Yeah,
he's going to be a free agent.
They have to.
Is Harden going to
opt in and sign an extension?
Yeah,
yeah, he is.
Yeah,
he didn't opt into his extension when he got traded there. Remember,
he's not worth it. I'm sorry,
bro. He's shooting 38% from the field, and 38% from 3 and 37% from the field.
Yeah, that's
disgusting.
He's not worth it.
Absolutely disgusting.
He's only averaging 13. He's 13 shots a game. I feel like that's nothing. Like for playoff James Harden, only 13 shots a game.
Listen, I don't even think Harden's worth $20 million a year. I think I'd give him a 3-year, $20 million deal. Maybe. But his next year in his contract's 44, 45. He's not worth $44 million. And listen, as bad as the fact that Ben Simmons didn't even play for Brooklyn in this entire season is one thing, but I think in 2 years from now, when Philly is ringless and Brooklyn at least has something to show for with a young Ben Simmons, a still 26-year-old Ben Simmons, 27-year-old Ben Simmons, we're gonna sitting here and thinking, and when Joel Embiid asks out because it's not working in Philly, I think we're gonna be sitting here thinking, wow, did Philadelphia really mess that up? And I mean, Harden. I mean, well, can you imagine 3 years ago, guys? You want to talk about the Celtics in 4 months ago? Could you imagine 3 years ago would be saying James Harden, who was averaging 36 points per game, would be giving us 18 a game now?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
I
3
think
years seems a little crazy.
Really happy with that.
Right?
I will say back
I mean, he was
then,
the MVP not too long ago.
I mean, I will say back then there were definitely questions on how his game would age, considering of how much volume and how much usage he was time and just his track record of not being in shape. We've seen it so many times in NBA history where a guy, if he's not in shape, he's going to deteriorate faster than all the other stars or players around him. That's why guys like Chris Paul and LeBron still playing in the NBA today, is because they tear their bodies and they're still playing at the highest level. Whereas James Harden, he's had injury concerns for years, or not injury concerns, but health concerns, especially in the playoffs, where he's just not in the way some of these other guys are. And you can see 2 seasons ago, or no, it was last season in Houston. Wow, it just seems forever ago. But he came to that season completely overweight, wanted to force a trade, and since he really hasn't gotten back to himself. Whereas he was looking slim in the bubble. I don't know if you guys remember those pictures of him like running on mountains and stuff, but bubble, and everybody was, oh, it's hard. And then after that, it just went completely downhill. Same situation we talked about with the Lakers too. Anthony Davis, he put on all this muscle, has not been healthy 2 years now, and you have to take care of your body once you get older in the NBA. Guys now played a decade of basketball, high-level basketball, especially these guys who go far into the playoffs. And so over time, they have to take care of their bodies. You cannot do the same thing at 30 years old you did at 20 years old. It's just a fact that goes throughout every human. Just part of the James Harden experience for the Philadelphia 76ers is the fact he's not in prime condition. And that is a problem because he is over 30 years old, and typically guards who rely a lot on explosiveness and quickness and getting to their spots where they want to be. Guards like Harden, who relies so heavily on that in his game, when you lose that can just be a detriment. We saw that with Isaiah Thomas and his hip injury. Once you lose that little first step there, I mean, it can just be a catastrophe. Honestly, what we might be going through is Harden. It's sad on one hand, but it was sort of predictable. Maybe not this fast, I would say, maybe a little bit more down the line, but I mean, it's not good to see. I love James Harden. I really do. Sucks that he played with the Nets and Sixers. Don't like either of those teams, but I am a James Harden fan.
It sucks to see Blake Griffin go down such a tough path as well. I've always been a Blake Griffin fan. Like,
he played well.
He did play well, but in terms of after he left LA, he had a really good year in Detroit. I believe he was an all-star that year. But his game really adjusted to the 22 version of the game where he's playing a 4 and 5 spot, but he's sitting at the perimeter. Not once did he ever sit at the perimeter in LA. He was strictly down low. He was one of those dominant 4s, super athletic, and it's a shame to see his game change so much. But it was really good. He gave Brooklyn any sort of hope these last 2 games that they had. Anytime he was in, Brooklyn made a run. So it was good to see Blake Griffin. He was one of my favorites, since we're mentioning favorites here. But guys, we have a lot of content to record in this next week. But as far as post-game shows, we wait to see who the Boston Celtics play. It's either going to be the Milwaukee Bucks or the Chicago Bulls. Right now, the Bucks own a commanding 3-1 lead over the Bulls, but that series could be far from over, with Chris Middleton being ruled out indefinitely. The Boston Celtics take a 116-112 shutout victory win over the Brooklyn Nets on the road. This has been it for your Celtics postgame show. I'm Justin Lowe. That's Rob Hatain. That's Seamus Darlingo. That's Ian Angelo. We will catch you guys next week for postgame shows, but stay tuned to our YouTube channel and our Instagram accounts for daily Celtics content. But for now, take care, everybody.